Today we're talking about Shin Godzilla, 2016 film. This is the first Godzilla film that I think I've seen. I've seen a part of the Monsters franchise. I've seen the Kong Skull Island, the American one, which, wasn't very good. But, I don't think I've even seen the other American one as well, like the one from like 2012 or something. I haven't seen that one yet. What does Shin mean in this context, Good question. I'm not actually too sure. Let's look it up right now. New, true, God. All words which I think apply in this context. From some of the discourse that I was able to suck in after watching this yesterday was that it's very much a reboot of the very first one from the 50s, but just trying to take itself more seriously. But it also does have some silly comedy elements. And I think my main takeaway from this, having not seen any other Godzilla movies, make sure you know that going in, is that it's very much focused on all of the politicians and just like the absolute incompetence that is going on behind the scenes. And it was really fun. It was really, really fun that the majority of this Godzilla movie is in boardrooms talking about what we should do. And in the back of my mind, every time they're talking, I'm like, this thing is literally murdering so many people right now. And they're like, they should be more panicked and rush to make a decision, because even though they say, and they definitely do mean it, that they are concerned for the people, it feels like they know that they have to be a part of this process to get things done. And yeah, it just slows them down. Godzilla versus King Kong. I have not seen it. Not the new one, not the old one. Have not seen it. So I know a lot of the old ones, they definitely look more silly. They look like people in suits, just like punching each other, getting airplanes and, smashing them together. But I think that this Godzilla, while it does still look silly, I think that American blockbusters or like American monster CGI fests, they really want to make it look realistic. And I was concerned going into this one because it doesn't look very realistic still, that it was going to take me aback a bit. But I think it is charming and it allows them to still like get the messages across. Because you would see in like American movies where it's like, oh, you do the thing where you only show like a foot at a time to try to show the scale. And then they try to make it covered in shadows to try to make it seem more realistic. But this one, hey, it's out in broad daylight. It's just matter of fact as it is. And it allows some of the effects to shine. Like the atomic breath was insane. That scene in the middle, oh, that was crazy. And the evolution was really interesting. So full on into spoilers. Full spoilers here. When Godzilla first appeared out of the water, its first form, coming out of the water, it had those hind legs and like just nubs for arms. And it was kind of like snaky. And its neck was like dangling and dropping blood everywhere. And its eyes were just like comically big. I was like, what is this? This isn't Godzilla. Am I watching the right movie? And maybe I was like, okay, maybe this is like the first creature that emerges. And then Godzilla comes in and he kills that creature, but then becomes the real threat. But no, it just evolved. But I did like all the evolution talk. The evolution talk was great. Do the Godzilla films have continuity, or are they all standalone? I think a lot of them do have continuity. I know this is a standalone one as of right now. I don't know if they have plans to further it. But I know from reading the synopsis of a few of the other ones, it's like, oh, they have to wake the sleeping Godzilla to fight this other monster and stuff. So I'm pretty sure that there is some continuity there. But there's probably just like a few different franchises where that canon is carried over, but I wouldn't be the one to go ask about that. Keeping on the thought train of the evolution stuff, I think that, that part really shined, and that it made Godzilla feel less like just raging monster animal going through the city, just like primal instincts, destroy everything, and that's its intent. But it kind of felt like it was just trying to like figure things out and is going through those stages. Exactly. The movie's whole purpose was to critique the incompetence of the Japanese government, specifically of the event involving nuclear plant in Japan. Yeah, and I think that definitely came across. I think that looking into it a bit, just reading the Wikipedia, it was very reminiscent of a tsunami/earthquake plus I think it was like a power plant explosion because Godzilla in the movie, when it's terrorizing the city, there's so many shots of like street level of like, water flooding in, or like, buildings falling, earthquake, just natural disaster imagery while it's just tearing through the city. But then when we get into more of like its powers and its radioactivity and it's shooting its like hyper beam, that is more reminiscent of the nuclear power plant. So it kind of feels like it was combining both of those into this one monster. And I think we all know that the original Godzilla is just talking about the atomic bomb and what that does to a city, and just like Tokyo in all of these movies, or I don't know if they're all set in Tokyo, but this one specifically, and I assume the original, I'm pretty sure the original, it's really making Japan a character and like how they're dealing with it, plus just, the terror that those bombs caused and how they have to deal with it now. And a lot in this movie, the international relationships were very interesting because it really made it feel like US wasn't a bad guy, but the US was like this big, annoying big brother to everybody who kind of feels like they're entitled to everything. And they just, they have so many resources and they kind of like get their way just because of how powerful they are. So looking at the characters a bit, a lot of the characters, you see them on screen and you know what context they're in, what group they're in, if they're with maybe like the president's chairman, or they're with the ragtag group of nerds that are trying to solve it, or then we have the American president plus his sidekick, which is the Japanese American lady who wants to be president one day. And so the characters were good. We were introduced to them with text saying like what their job was. I could see how that could be annoying, but I think I kind of liked seeing like their introductions, even though there is so many characters, because really it is about it's about the collective Japan, like I said before, and there's so many different people a part of that, and there must be so many people that go into these decisions, the decision making that it takes with disasters like this. Not focusing on like one specific person, I didn't mind it in this. But if we were to choose a main character, would it be this guy? I don't even know his name in the movie, honestly. I don't remember at all. And so we'll call him, the up-and-comer. I don't really want to say that. Okay, this guy. So he really felt like the main character. He was the one at the beginning who was like, oh, it could be a creature, when there was, a evaporation in the ocean, and then, a pipe burst in like one of the tunnels. He's like, oh, let's not rule out, a creature. And then everyone's like, we have no time for your jokes. But then right away, they got turned around. And there was a few of those moments that are like lightly comedic where it's like, it could be a creature. And then they look on the news and it's like, oh, it's a creature. And then we have that one scene where the president is addressing everybody. It's like, I got to make a press conference. I got to calm everybody down. And he's like, so there's no way that this creature comes on land. Its legs couldn't support its weight. And then somebody in the middle of him giving a press conference comes, whispers in his ear, pss, 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 pss. Yeah, so it's on land. And, I don't know. It balanced. Some of the comedy was pretty funny. And a lot of the comedy came from, the incompetence of some people, of the government. So many avenues where it has to go. And it's not like there were people that were bumblingly stupid in the movie. It was just like, there are so many avenues, so many cabinet meetings. They're just like, they're having these meetings. And then somebody's like, oh, you go do this. And they're like, okay. And then they just continue to sit in the meeting. And it's like, you guys are literally in boardrooms this whole time. And the way that they like moved from location to location, everything was very fast. There was a lot of those things where it's like they talk about something and it feels like they're still in the middle of the conversation. There still has, some distance to go in the conversation. But then they mention something. It's like, oh yeah, Godzilla has this power. And then it cuts right to Godzilla doing that thing. It's like they mention it in the middle of a conversation and it cuts right to that. And it kept the pace really going. I feel like there wasn't a lot of time to breathe until the very end, where this guy and the girl, the American girl, where they're at the end and they're just talking about, what went down and everything. And so I kind of like that pacing. The whisper in the ear during the press conference, I wonder if that's a reference to 9/11. Definitely could be. When George Bush was on camera reading to kids And the man whispered in his ear. Yeah, I think I've seen that video. He was like at a school, right? He was doing a school appearance and he was reading like a book to kids. And then they came in, they whispered in his ears like, so yeah, definitely has that vibes. Definitely has that vibes. I really did enjoy seeing their strategies on how to face Godzilla. And it feels like they really didn't do that much until like all the tanks and planes came out. It felt like there was so much time where they're just talking about it. And again, that delayed response that probably, really stunted them. So there's so many meetings, they're talking about it, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes into this hibernation. And then eventually they form this plan where they have a few different areas of attack. They have the planes dropping. So first they start with a bunch of helicopters, shoot machine guns. They're like, oh, this is doing nothing. Then they have another attack. They have planes dropping bombs. Oh, doing nothing. Then they have another attack. They have tanks shooting. And it was just like, it made sense. It's not just mindless, a million different resources. They were talking about like the allocation of resources, if America should step in, that America wanted to nuke it. And they're like, no, we got to figure it out first. We don't want another, nuclear explosion. That would suck. So yeah, just like the method to it was really like laid out and it made sense, which was cool. And then their plan in the end to freeze it. I don't know how I felt about that, especially the way it was visually done, where it's like, it just suddenly freezes. Or it's like, would that really happen? But I mean, it is a Godzilla movie, so, it's like, that wouldn't really happen. But, the plan to freeze it, it was fun. It made sense. The nerds had to win some way. This was definitely a pro-nerd movie. Go nerds. And then after they freeze it, a shot that a lot of people talk about, the very final shot of the movie. So, let me set the scene. Final scene in the movie. Godzilla had just been frozen, and now it's a statue in the middle of Tokyo representing the destruction that it caused. And it could wake in the future. So it's not over. But they're optimistic, they found a way to figure it out. And then the camera goes to its tail, and it pans up its tail to see this. And it's very quick. I had to look back on it, because I saw the tail and the movie ended, and I was like, why are we looking at this right at the end of the movie? And it looks like a bunch of humanoids, I don't think it's real people, trying to like evolve from its tail. And so I think there's two ways this could be interpreted. One, it's kind of like humanizing Godzilla in a way. It's saying that it's kind of like a representation of the destruction that it caused, while also saying that Godzilla, it's a creature at the end of the day. The second interpretation, which is kind of cool, which I'm leaning towards looking at it more, because you see the, there's spikes on this like humanoid's back, just like Godzilla had the spikes on his back. That because they was so focused on evolution, and Godzilla went through so many stages, that Godzilla finally was able to like use the structure of a humanoid body, and it was trying to evolve into that. It was like a last-ditch effort, which makes sense that it's at its tail, something that's so far behind its regular mass. And it was trying to evolve and like spout offspring that were humanoids. And I think a really cool thought, kind of chilling, is that maybe it was like, okay, I'm getting frozen. I really have to do something to like, preserve myself. Because, animal nature is all about self-preservation. It's trying to preserve itself. And it's trying to be like, shoot out these humanoid offsprings to go into the world, to continue its line. And maybe one did. Maybe there's like a human out there now, or at least a humanoid that was a part of the Godzilla and didn't get frozen and is now out on the streets, recouping for its next barrage. That's a pretty cool thought. Oh, I think that the copy that I watched, the subtitles weren't very good, because sometimes it just didn't make sense. But I got the gist of it. There were the buzzwords in there that made it make sense. I kind of had to do a bit of thinking, reworking of the words that it threw in front of me. I don't think I watched the best copy. But visually it looked great. Hey, the atomic breath was cool. That was just such a great scene, where it's like, at first it was just this giant monster physically destroying things. And then it transformed into the radioactivity of the atomic breath, starting from fire and then going to a centralized beam cutting through buildings. And then the wide shot of just like the city on fire, Godzilla there, all glowy purpley. That was awesome. Yeah, never thought of one escaping, but that could be a possibility. That would be so cool. That would be awesome. Ugh. Because, yeah, the more I'm looking at it, really, this is such a great image, a great final image. Because, again, it's such a stark ending. You look at it, it's like, okay, it's its tail. But then you're looking at it, it's like, why is the tail like this? You see the humanoid heads, hands, things on its back reminiscent of Godzilla, crying out, trying to survive. And just weird, like, alien-looking flesh at the top. Yeah. It's such a cool image. Very cool image. How do I want to say this? The movie was very realistic, but not like the ultra realism that some American films tried to go for. It was realistic in the interpretation of the characters, because none of them are bad guys. There's no one person that's like, Godzilla is God, I must side with Godzilla and do whatever it says. I mean, there was like a few chants, a few cult gatherings. But nobody in the political system was necessarily holding everybody back. It was just the system itself. Everybody wanted the best for the Japanese people. I mean, it's their home, and everybody felt that. Everybody wanted the best, and there was multiple moments where they're like, no, we can't attack it right now. There are civilians on the ground. That kind of stopped the first plane attack that they were going to do. But again, it's just like the system that is in place, the government system, there's so many channels. Just like when everybody knows what has to be done. But you have to go to this person first, then go to this person. Then you can only do this policy if these requirements are met. I remember there was like, the president was like hesitant to make a national state of emergency, and it was the first one since the Second World War. And he was hesitant to do it just because of what it meant rather than what they needed to do in that scenario. But yeah, it was a great movie. Really good time. Really liked it.